Welcome to the MasterMined Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the MasterMined Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.
First things first, before anything else, it's really cool to see all of the people who've come through the educational content that Scott's been putting on throughout the years in that promotional video we just watched. So it's just yeah, good to see people such as Joe um, out here building and operating Bitcoin mines. So for those of you who don't already know me, my name's Taylor. I've been working with Scott for a few years to do this kind of educational content, as well as help out with some of the conferences and that sort of thing. I do have my own company, Solomon Data Systems, out here supporting Bitcoin mining world and everything that it's doing. So let's get into things here. First things first. I'm calling it a hot take, but it's not really a hot take for people who know this. It's not a PPA. It kind of is like a PPA is a power purchase agreement, and it sounds like that is what you want when, as a Bitcoin miner, you go to buy energy. It's kind of one of these energy industry terminology things where typically a PPA is actually an agreement from an independent power producer or somebody who owns a power plant to sell energy to a utility, right? What we're actually talking about for the most part here is an ESA, which is an energy supply agreement, right? So just right out of the gate, it's not a PPA. So there is that I just want to cover and get out of the way right away. Just a little bit about me. Um, I was uh, rewiring motors and playing with broken computer parts and building motherboards literally before I could read. Um, got into Bitcoin for the first time sometime around 2011, 2012, mining a few coins here and there on my laptop. Um, Wish I still had them. I'd be on a beach right now, not doing this presentation. Was So I spent about 5 years as an electromechanical maintenance engineer in a cream cheese factory. We ran our own wastewater treatment plant at that facility, which gave me some insight on how to do things like immersion cooling, which requires treated water, as well as being on the hazmat containment team for our ammonia refrigerant system there. So solid background in industrial processes, which I found very relevant when it comes to building Bitcoin mines, which I affectionately refer to as freedom factories, because a lot of it at scale does become very very industrial. So I mean that factory background definitely has been useful for me. Now, um, I will say, I was definitely not the kind of person that would do my homework in the class before, and that uh, is not something that happened at all right now. So I would just say myself and some others during the conversation at the end, we're going to be giving you guys a lot of valuable information on how to buy energy cheaply. which I'll be touching base on in a minute here, but is really what we want when we talk about buying PPAs. But if you're planning on doing what I often do when I come to these sort of presentations, which is screen capping a slide or two here and there in order to take notes for yourself. I would recommend potentially actually just typing up or writing some notes because there's not a lot of writing or pictographs in my deck here. So just want to mention that. So let's get into it. Well, okay. I suppose I should mention I've been full time in the Bitcoin mining industry for about 4 years now. I've been directly involved in something like 250 megawatts of transactions. The site that I'm currently sitting in, I'm in my office at a 10 megawatt build here in South Texas. We've got another two sites going, totaling 25 megs in Texas, and then another 30 megs in Iowa that I'm working on right now. So I've definitely cut my teeth in the industry in the last 4 years to be able to share this information with you guys. Okay, so these are kind of the four areas that we're going to go over. What do we mean when we say that we want to buy a PPA? Okay, so we'll touch base on that, and the next heading kind of gives away the answer to that question, which is really what we mean when we say we want to buy a PPA is that we want to buy energy inexpensively. Okay, so we'll talk about some tips and tricks on how to do that. And the kind of the next thing that follows logically from that is know your supplier, right? Because if you want to be able to get the lowest cost service from your supplier, then you need to be able to work with them in a way that is efficient and collaborative, so that they're able to provide you for that service and create a win-win for everyone. And I do believe it's very important to do that. Unlike some examples we've seen in the industry, which I'll touch base on later on. And again, just following from that logically, knowing your supplier, um, and being able to work with them in that collaborative fashion, particularly when it comes to an entity who is as traditional as a utility, largely involves de-risking them, right? Okay, so it's just kind of where we're going. What does a PPA mean? How are we going to buy energy cheaply? That's through knowing our supplier and through de-risking them. So let's get into the first one. So, um, you want to buy a PPA, right? Well, um, maybe you actually don't. uh, what people typically mean when they say they want to buy a PPA is one of two things, right? You want to buy electricity cheaply, and you want to buy electricity at a cheap price, at a cheap and fixed price over a long period of time. Okay, and when it comes to that buying of energy at a fixed price over a long period of time, um, there's a there's a conservative, traditional business strategy where hedging your cost of supply like that is a good thing. It really is dangerous territory for a Bitcoin miner in a number of ways. The first and foremost way is, and we'll mention this a few times throughout this conversation, is that buying energy at a hedged price like that is not the cheapest way to buy electricity, and that increases our overall costs of operation, though it does de-risk us, right? And the reason for that is because in order for somebody to be able to provide you that fixed price of energy, that means that they need to price it at a point where they believe they can make money throughout the duration of the contract on doing that for you. And it also means that there's a very, very large risk involved in doing that for them. And, I mean, all of those of us who've studied a little bit of business, which I'm sure we all have here, know that risk comes with a cost. You have to pay somebody for taking on that risk for you, because when they agree to supply you that, say, 4.5 cent power over a period of 5 years, they're agreeing to provide you that energy at 4.5 cents, even if it costs them 10 cents. And as has happened um, a number of times in the industry, it's put utilities and energy suppliers out of business. And what happens if, okay, so if you're at a little bit of a smaller scale, like you're probably not going to be putting a large company out of business because they supplied you a hedge. But it really depends on the counterparty that you're dealing with. Like when you make this agreement with somebody and you agree to give somebody, say, $1 million to lock in X amount of power for 5 years for you, you're trusting that they're going to be able to supply that energy to you, and that your $1 million isn't going to evaporate when they go out of business because they made a bad trade for you, right? So pros and cons to buying a fixed price ESA, not PPA. um, and yeah, I mean, just yeah, point being, like really what we mean when we say we want to buy a PPA is we want to buy energy inexpensively, and we want to try and get it at as constant of a price as we can. And a little bit later on, we'll talk about some more ways that we can actually achieve both of those things. Mhm. Gosh, I'm sorry for how the text is here. It was not like this when I was just going over the deck this morning, but that's okay. We're gonna we're gonna barrel on and keep sharing some information with you guys. So let's dive a little bit deeper into how to buy energy cheaply, right? The first one seems obvious, but it's not necessarily like. um there's kind of two ways you can go about deciding where to locate your first site or your next site or whatever it is, right? There's the uh, traditional business wisdom approach of doing what you can where you are locally to get started, and there is a ton of value in that. And there's the other kind of optimizer approach. The choice of which one to do really depends on your risk tolerance, and where you're at in life. Are you comfortable managing a business remotely? Do you have a family? Are you willing to move? Are you not willing to move? Are you willing to travel a lot? All those kinds of questions. But I mean, yeah, I mean, how to buy energy cheaply? Go to where the cheap energy is, right? Not rocket science, but a lot of people who would be like, "This is how you should start a business," would say, "Well, no, do what you can where you are." And and again, pros and cons to each, but not being very careful with how much your energy costs, we all know, is a massive risk to a Bitcoin mining business. So typically, the cost of energy is cheaper in rural areas as compared to cities. If you did want to look more locally, and other than that, you need to look at the cost to produce the energy in your area, which is something we'll dive a little bit deeper in later on, right? So just go to where the cheap power is, guys. Don't mess around trying to build a mine on 7 cent power. Like it's not going to help you. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to find that later on. So getting in a little bit deeper into the concept of buying power real time, rather than even day ahead or on a long term fixed price. Um, just just touching base on the note of what it means if somebody sells you that hedge, and say for example, natural gas price goes up, and the price that they sold you that hedge at is out of the market. You can see here I said If somebody is selling you a 10 megawatt hedge, and it's 3 cents out of the market, meaning that they're selling you the power at 4.5 cents, and the cost to provide you that power is 7.5 cents, which is something that happened recently when natural gas went to $9. That means that they're paying $2.6 million a year on your behalf to sell you that electricity, and that's coming directly out of their pockets, directly out of their credit facilities. And if they can't pay it anymore, all of a sudden you don't have an energy supply agreement anymore, and whatever money you paid them as a down payment to secure this hedge is now gone or in litigation. Now, this isn't to say that hedges are bad. Hedges are great. That also means that if you stop consuming that power, if you're in an energy market like ERCOT or PJM, you can do this thing that we all hear about, know, and love as Bitcoin miners, of selling that energy back into the grid, and that lowers your for a higher price than you're paying it, which lowers your overall cost to buy electricity and all these things, which are great. Um, it's just uh, not guaranteed that things are going to work out. And the information that I'm sharing are some of the things to think about as pros and cons on whether or not you want to go down that road. One of the other things to consider when it comes to buying a hedge or buying a fixed cost of energy is that you you're essentially stepping into the role of being a power trader. Like, when you buy a hedge, you are swing trading energy, and you are betting your business on that bet. um, One of the things that I always like to say about Bitcoin mining is that like in some senses, people always talk about how collaborative the industry is, and I do find that, and that's one thing that I love about it. But in another sense, people always talk about how competitive the industry is, and that's because there's only so much Bitcoin to be mined on every block, and we all are attempting to mine that Bitcoin for less than it costs to buy one. And if we don't do that, that means that we go out of business. Okay, so if we follow this logic a little bit, this tells us that Bitcoin mining is always profitable for somebody, but not for everybody. Because if at any point there's going to be people who mine for a higher cost, there's going to be people who mine for a lower cost, right? So when hash price goes down, if you're in that upper area of people who are mining for a higher cost, you're going to have to turn off. And then what happens then is hash rate goes down, and now mining becomes more profitable again for these people, and they stay in business, right? So say for example, you think now is a great time to buy a fixed price for electricity. And looking at some market indicators such as the price of natural gas, which is probably the most important one for the price to supply electricity globally, since natural gas is now a globally traded commodity due to the advent of liquid natural gas tankers that can cross oceans. Um, so you're looking, you're saying, okay, I actually haven't checked in like the last month, but you're saying, like, call it $2 an MMBTU natural gas, whereas 2-3 years ago we were at $10 an MMBTU, 5 times the price. Like now looks like a great time to buy a hedge. Well, because of that spike in natural gas that we've had, the grid instabilities that we've had, such as Winter Storm Uri, people are putting a large risk premium on selling you that hedge, because they need to be able to make money on providing you that service, and they need to not go out of business. So it's just uh, power trading is a complex and involved game, not something to just walk into willy nilly. And just to tie it back a little bit to the discussion that I was just sharing regarding Bitcoin mining being always profitable for somebody but not for everybody. Well, if you buy a hedge today at, say, um, $42 a megawatt hour in ERCOT with a 20% deposit for the total price of electricity that you're going to consume over 5 years. And this is probably unlikely, but for the purpose of conversation, say that the price of energy drops to 1.5 cents over this next 5 years. Now, your mining operation is not competitive in comparison to others, and that's a challenge that you can get yourself into. Um, and again, comparing the real time markets to even the not long term hedged markets, but just purchasing energy day ahead, right? Buying power real time historically is 5 to 20% cheaper than buying energy day ahead. And there's pros and cons to each. It's where do you want to take your risks? Like, if we do get ourselves into a situation where natural gas is $5 to $10 for 2 years again, and you don't have a hedge with a counterparty that is actually has the credit and capital to continue to sell you that energy at the price that you agreed to, then you're might be in for a little bit of a world of hurt. So just things to think about when it comes to whether to buy energy real time, whether to buy a day ahead, and whether you do or don't actually want a hedge. And the next point again is gonna be a little bit simpler, kind of similar to how the first one was, which is if you want to buy something cheaply, buy it in bulk. It's if you're um a beginning miner, I would say, yeah, just get started. Like, get two ASICs on, get 10 or 20, however you can, get your feet wet, start doing it um, any way you can, however you can right now. Get started. Don't wait. But um, your your price of energy is going to be a lot less expensive the more of it that you're going to buy. Typically, in my experience, the threshold for the lowest cost tariff in most areas is somewhere between 1 megawatt and 10 megawatts. Obviously, that's a pretty big range. Just gotta kind of dig into your local codes or whichever utility or co-op you're planning on working with to find out um, where that threshold is. Uh, Talking about ancillaries, riders are essentially agreements you can make with your utility to be a good partner to them. And what I mean when I say this is uh, just a little bit about like how um, energy supply and the grid works. Like the demand for energy throughout the day is not a straight line like this, right? Like in the morning, all the factories are turning on. In the evenings, people are turning on their heat, their ACs. Everybody's watching TV. Everybody's on their computers and their Xboxes. They're charging their electric cars now. So I mean the amount of energy that when I say demand, I mean the amount of energy that people are requesting from the grid throughout the day. It goes like this. It's peaky. It's not constant, and it curves throughout the day. And what that means is that you need to be able to produce energy at this level all the time because uh, the amount of energy supply in the grid and the amount of energy that's being requested from the grid, they always need to match. You cannot have a mismatch because if you do, um, basically it causes all sorts of problems. Like the grid's going to shut down, transformers are going to be blowing up. It's not going to be good, right? So you have to be able to produce the maximum amount of energy that the produce and distribute the maximum amount of energy that the grid is going to consume. Um, but what that means is there's tons of wasted capacity in this area that's below that line. So that's why participating in programs like demand response and we all hear about curtailing as Bitcoin miners is so important because it essentially means that you're buying electricity and capacity to distribute that electricity from your suppliers that would not otherwise be able to be sold. and that's a fantastic thing for everybody. And also, it means that if there's a sudden unexpected spike in demand or a sudden unexpected drop in supply, such as a power plant going down or transmission lines going down, that means that you can turn on and off your load to make sure that people in their homes can get electricity so that people can have AC in the summer, heat in the winter, keep their food in their fridge cold. These are very, very important things. So, just to recap, um, how to buy energy cheaply? Well, go to where the cheap energy is. Uh, you can either decide, I'm gonna float real time on the market because we know historically that's the cheapest way to buy electricity, or you can choose to buy a hedge and say, I'm gonna be an energy trader. I am, for I think that we're gonna go to war with Russia, and due to that, I think the price of natural gas is going to go up. So I'm going to lock in my price for electricity now. And that means that my cost is going to be lower than the next guy, and I'm going to be able to. There's going to be times when I can sell that electricity into the grid at a profit. So those are the two choices you can make there. Then of course, when you're thinking about like how you're planning your business, whether you want to be a host, whether you want to self mine, what kind of units you're going to buy, how much money you have available. Um, the goal should be to, if you're buying energy from the grid, rather than producing energy behind the meter, like for example the site that Scott's at right now. um, if you're buying energy from the grid, your goal, which we're talking about PPAs here, your goal should be to reach a critical mass of purchasing electricity as fast as you can, in order to reach those lower prices, as well as to be a good partner to the people who are providing that energy to you. All right, let's move on to the next one. So, you you want to be a good partner to your supplier here, and you also want to understand the cost centers, so that well, hey, I want cheaper kilowatt hours. How can I actually achieve that, right? So, the thing to understand about energy supply agreements and buying power from our utility is, the average person, and this was definitely me 4 years ago, thinks about your utility as the person who is producing the power that you're consuming, and that's actually not true. It's independent power producers or power plants who sell the electricity to people who own wires to distribute that to you, and we buy from the people who own those wires. Now, that's important because that means that your utility is essentially a broker. They're a broker that owns distribution infrastructure, right? So that, to some extent, there is margins involved there that you can negotiate them down on, but at the end of the day, they can't sell you the power cheaper than they're buying it, right? And the people who are making that power can't sell it to them for cheaper than it costs them to make it. And uh, when I put it quite like that, it probably seems like super simple, like duh, or like oversimplified. But that like having clarity in that nuance becomes important when trying to engage in these large energy purchase transactions. So, what does this mean? How can we use this little bit of a gross oversimplification of the grid, to be a better Bitcoin miner, right? So I was mentioning earlier that your utility or your broker that owns these wires, can't sell you the power cheaper than they can buy it for, and the people who are making it can't sell it cheaper than what they can make it for, right? So one way we can have a look at what the cost is to produce this energy, is there's something called the LCOE, which is a levelized cost of energy. What that means is the cost to install the power plant divided by its expected lifespan plus the cost to maintain and operate it divided by the total kilowatt hours that it's going to produce, as well as decommissioning in some cases. So the levelized cost of energy is essentially, and there's some argument about this, but it's a pretty good way to determine what the cost is to produce each kilowatt hour over the total lifespan of different types of power generation. So what you can do is there's a number of institutions out there, universities, private equity firms, banks that release these reports on the levelized cost of energy for either looking at different energy types in a spectrum or for individual types of energy. One of them that's really good that I've been reading their yearly report for years comes from a private equity firm called Lazard. That's LAZARD. Um, so what you can then do is, you can go and read this report and look at, okay, like the best wind farms with their tax incentives have a levelized cost of energy of something like 3 cents. For solar, it can get as low as 2.5 cents. For natural gas combined cycles turbines, it can get as low as 4 cents. For things like geothermal or for peaker plants for nuclear, it's more like 5 to 7 cents. So you can look at these things and then you can go on either the EIA website, the Energy Institute of America, or maybe you live in Minnesota. You can go on the MISO website and you can go to the area for your state, and you can look at the what's called the grid mix for the area that you live in. The grid mix is the average percent of kilowatt hours that are supplied in your state for people who want to consume electricity by energy type. Okay, so you can look and see. Well, say for example, like I mentioned Minnesota a second ago. I'm from Wisconsin, right? Scott was my neighbor for a long time. And so I'm here in Wisconsin, and I see that Wisconsin's grid mix is something like 40% natural gas. Great, natural gas is a super cheap way to produce electricity. That's awesome. I should be able to buy really cheap power here. Well, wrong, because Wisconsin does not have a ton of gas wells, and it's expensive to transport that gas across the country. Okay, and then I don't know. You can look at state like, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm shooting from the hip a little bit here, like Georgia, that has a ton of nuclear power. Now, when it comes to producing energy with nuclear, there is somewhat of a higher levelized cost of energy, but the cost to produce it is fixed. If we have a situation like what we had in the industry a few years ago, where natural gas went to $10 an MMBTU, essentially, all of a sudden that fixed cost to produce nuclear looks very, very attractive. So this is kind of like another one of those things where uh, in terms of buying power either real time or day ahead or looking to get a long term fixed hedge, which is becoming more and more difficult to do, or maybe getting a little bit easier again, but was difficult for a while. There's different nuances to going in each direction, and it really requires each of us as operators and business owners to sit down and make a decision on what's right for you. There and when and why. There really isn't like a one size fits all answer to these questions. Um, so one point of discussion is it's actually really hard to make cheap kilowatt hours and make cheap energy. Like Like everybody wants 3 cents, 3 cent, 3.5 cents power. Like, try to go build a power plant and do that. You're gonna have a hard time, I promise. So what that means as Bitcoin miners is that it's very, very important to be good partners to those people who produce that electricity, so that you can take advantage of that unsold electricity and unsold capacity to distribute it when it's available, but that you absolutely are not um, consuming energy when it's not available and when people need it, to heat their homes. Um, yeah, so I guess I kind of already dug into the third point on this middle section here, which is grid mix risk factors. Like, Texas, cheapest energy in the country when natural gas is low. When natural gas is high, that's to some extent not quite the same. To to one extent or another, the average cost to produce energy, like for example, natural gas going up in price is going to put buying pressure on coal. It's going to make coal go up in price. And then, generally speaking, if the cost of energy, the cost to produce energy goes up in one area, people are going to be selling energy for more in that area. And then, people in other areas that might not be so affected by it are still going to be looking next door like, hey, you guys are selling electricity over there for 10 cents. That means I can sell it for 7, even if my cost to produce it hasn't gone up, right? So to some extent, the because natural gas is a globally traded commodity now, the the cost to buy energy is going to be affected everywhere because of that. Um, it is slower in regulated markets rather than deregulated markets like ERCOT. Um, but to some extent, it will be affected. However, if you're in a place that has, say, a ton of wind or a ton of nuclear or a ton of hydro or even geothermal is starting to become a thing now, those things their cost to produce electricity is only the cost to build and maintain the plant. There's no input that needs to be purchased. There's no fuel, right? So there's no cost of fuel to drastically change that cost of energy, which is one of the ways that, other than owning your own power production, that you can look at buying energy at relatively the same price over a long period of time, rather than just relying on a hedge. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next point here. Talked a whole lot about electricity, different types of power plants, that kind of thing, and that middle point. But we still are on the purpose of this section is know your supplier, right? So the thing with these power companies is like, you know, as Bitcoin miners, like a lot of us are idealists. We want to change the world. We want to uh, provide banking services to those who don't have it. We want to be a part of creating hard money, a better money that's going to be better for people all over the world. But we also tend to have a very gung ho and a little bit of like gold rush ish kind of attitude, where we're like, we want to get as much power on as we can. We want to mine as much Bitcoin as we can. It's going to be awesome, right? Well, the power company's way of doing business is not like that. Their priority isn't sell as much power as they possibly can, grow as big as they can. Their priority is keeping the heat on so that people don't die, right? And not only that, but like they're an established industry that's been around for a century, like, and they don't care often about selling another few megawatts of electricity. Like, they care more about protecting their long-standing business model, doing it the way they've always done it, and not fixing what's not broken, right? So, kind of like another point to mention that goes in line with that is like, for people who have like studied a little bit of finance, like they only target uh, a 7 to 10% internal return, and that speaks volumes about their risk tolerance. Like if they're only targeting a 7 to 10% internal return on the amount of capital that's invested in their company, that is an extremely low risk type of investment. And then you have somebody coming from an extremely volatile and historically high risk industry saying, "Hey, I want to be a customer that is going to be 33% of your entire co-op." And you can start to see how those incentives are can be a little bit misaligned. There's ways to align them, but that's that's the way they look at things. They're like, guys, like we're just trying to keep the heat on over here, and you want me to sell you how many megawatts to what? They look at us as a massive risk. So there's ways to de-risk. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's just go over a quick summary of everything we just talked about right now. Your utility is not the person who is producing the energy that you're consuming. They are distributing it to you and they are brokering it to you. They cannot sell it to you for cheaper than they can buy it. And you can just look at your local grid, MISO, SPP, ERCOT, PJM, and see what the cost of energy is right now. You can't buy it for cheaper than the the cost of it on the grid, and it can't be sold into the grid for cheaper than the cost to make it. Um, there's plenty of information out there about how much it costs to make energy in different ways, and there's plenty of information out there about the percentages of different types of power productions in various states. So go out there, get familiar with that stuff. Um, Learn a little bit. It'll be very helpful for your business. And then yeah, these utilities guys, they do not care about selling you more megawatts. I mean, they do, but they care more about not breaking their business model and keeping the heat on. And gosh, I guess I'll just take this time to make a very very critical point. Um, Guys, I hate to break it to you, but your utility salespeople are salespeople. They will tell you what they need to tell you to close the deal. And I have to say, I felt lied to uh, on a number of occasions, right? So just because you call up your local utility or co-op, you talk to your guy, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I can sell you power for 4.5 cents all day. It'll be great. It'll be awesome." It might not be true. So be forewarned about that. How how can you uh, avoid that risk? Well, gonna have to learn to read a rate schedule or a tariff. Break out. Thank you, Nile. Gonna have to uh, yeah, I mean, learn to read a rate schedule, learn to read tariffs, break out your Excel spreadsheet. If you don't know how to use one, you're going to need somebody who can in your business, anyways, and break down. Go through like the all the different times power costs more, all the different times power costs less, what your load is going to look like, and average it out into a final number. Like, don't expect the utility to give you it's almost like dealing with the IRS. Like you got to figure out how much your taxes cost about, and if you're wrong, sucks to be you. Right. So yeah, gonna have to dive into those rate schedules, get comfortable figuring out how to use a good old spreadsheet to break down your own costs. And then the other way, but probably the best way is to look at a bill from somebody in your area who's on the same or a similar rate schedule to you, and just divide that how many dollars they paid by how many kilowatt hours they consumed. And that is the realest and best way to get a cost of electricity. Now, that's probably not going to be exactly the same as what you're going to end up paying, because we're going to be doing something like, participating in these curtailment and these demand response programs and all these things. So, you got to think about that, because if you're looking at a, Joe Schmo factory up the road that uh, has 5 megawatts of demand, but they're not constantly consuming 5 megawatts of kilowatt hours, that doesn't equal out to the same price that you're paying. Yes, absolutely right on that, Joe. When modeling out a sample load, has been a solid way to get a pretty truthful representation of what your power is going to end up costing you. Um, you do need to build up sometimes some social capital with your utility before they're going to be willing to do that with you, because you got to remember, that's asking their employee to spend 4 hours, 8 hours doing all this work for you, and if they don't have reason to believe that you're serious, and they don't have reason to believe that you're not like every other Bitcoiner that's called them up and gotten them to do a bunch of work for no reward, um, then they may be a little bit less inclined to do that work for you. But yes, having a sample load modeled out is another great way to go about things. So, how to protect yourself, to recap, from the sales guy telling you what he needs to close a deal, is learn to read your rate schedules, and and do your own calculations. Um, Look at sample bills and ask for a sample load to be modeled up for you. All right, let's move on to the next section. So, how can we de-risk ourselves to our local utilities? Well, this actually follows exactly from the last thing that I was just saying, which is, guys, when we talk about megawatts in this industry, like we throw around 1 megawatt like it's a small number. Um, like 5 megawatts powers, a town of like thousands of people with thousands of houses in it, right? So, we talk about even asking for just 1 megawatt of power. The amount of work that goes into that behind the scenes with utilities, from engineering, billing, management oversight and approval, like just to give you an answer to whether or not they can give you that megawatt, is, we're talking about thousands of dollars at a minimum, maybe even 10, 20, $10,000, 20,000, just to give you that answer, right? So we've got to understand is that, when we're going around to all these utilities, and we're calling up everybody, and we're like, hey, like, do you have 10 megawatts you can give me here? Do you have 25 megawatts you can give me there? How fast can you do it? Give me the answer right now, right now. I need this. And then when we show up, and maybe we you know they maybe we do find a provider who can actually sell us that electricity for 4.7 cents, and everything's great, everything's awesome. We get across the line just to the point of doing the paperwork, and maybe we don't even have the money to turn on 1 megawatt, or if we do, we show up and we asked for 25, and it's a year later and we're still only consuming 3 because we got too big for our britches, and asked for more than we could handle. We bit off more than we could chew, and now it's the utility who's up Bleep Creek without a paddle. So, this is one of the many reasons why, it's fantastic to be a dreamer. It's fantastic to have big goals and want to go big and be ambitious and all these things. And people who are in our industry often have many of those characteristics, but this is why utilities uh, are sometimes hesitant to work with us, because they've been burnt, right? So don't be that guy. Like, be straightforward, with yourself first of all, and with your counterparty second, about how much you can actually handle, when you can actually handle it, and then do what you say you're going to do. And if you do that with 100 kilowatts, you do that with a megawatt, with your providers, you're going to build up a good working relationship with them that will result and them being more flexible with you on things like pricing, deposits, etc. Okay, so you know, another common thing that we run into our industry is utilities take forever to do things. Well, why do they take forever to do things? Well, they just don't need to sell us power. Like they don't care, right? And on top of it, just like in the point that I was discussing before, we're asking them to spend a whole lot of money on our behalf in this risky industry to provide us a service that they're not even going to make that much money on, right? So why would I move faster? Okay, like I made a few points, discussing this first point here, talking about before for them to even tell you how much power they can give you, they're already spending a bunch of money, right? Okay, now let's say that we've signed an agreement, we've paid our deposit, and we want the utility to bring us distribution lines from the substation a mile away. Okay, and set up a primary meter and current transformers, reclow zero, all that stuff, uh, on our behalf, so that they can give us electricity. Well, that stuff costs money, guys. It costs a lot of money. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in my experience, typically the utility um, asks you to pay for some of it, but you're not actually paying for all of it, which means that they are extending you credit. They are spending money on you on your behalf so that they can provide you a service that they're not even making that much money on, 7 to 10% internal rate of return. And you're sitting here calling them, blowing up their phone. Hey, could you be a little faster? Seems a little rude. So do we we want that power line in a month, not 6 months? Well, uh, that's a common thing these days. Um, pay for the entire cost of the project. Like I can pay it up front, either in a letter of credit or a deposit. And maybe even do a thing like give them a surety bond that you will perform. That when you say that you're going to be at 2 megawatts in 6 months, and in 18 months you're going to be at 10 megawatts. That you have capital on the line, saying that if I don't hit this number, and if you spend money on my behalf, then you're going to get paid and you're going to recoup that money even if I don't hit that number, because now the money that I put up for my surety bond is going to be in your bank account. Or I'm going to actually be consuming that load, doing that business with you, and that money is going to be in your bank account, meaning that you're going to recoup the money that you spent on my project, right? Um, okay, so moving on, there's one other thing I found is that you know don't just be a voice on the phone. Get on a Zoom call. Oh, it's getting late here. Okay, yeah, we're close to the end. Um, don't just be a voice on the phone. Like get on a Zoom call. Like go down to the local office. Like shake hands with someone. Um, and like more gets done on a Zoom than gets done on the phone. More gets done in person than gets done on a Zoom call, right? So just by being face to face, being a real person in front of them, and showing the effort to go stand in front of them, shake their hand, and get lunch together already is above and beyond what a lot of people do. Um, and so from a risk management perspective, like in the business world, we don't want to depend all on one customer, right? We want to diversify, because if that one customer goes out of business, then we go out of business, right? So you got to remember that, like, when we're buying power from these co-ops and these local utilities, like Joe said earlier, every site he's in, he is their largest customer. Okay, so him as their largest customer, like, means that if Joe goes out of business, that's going to severely impact the business of the person who he is buying that power from, and they don't want to go out of business either, and they want to keep the lights on, right? So these things that seem sometimes to us, especially those of us who are like just getting in the industry, as like, well, why can't you just sell me the electricity? Like, why can't you do this deal? Is, well, there's very, very important reasons why. I'm like like Riot with their 2 cent power contract, guys, they put massive retail energy providers out of business on at least one occasion, I think two now, because they bullied them with the size of their deal into signing a contract that went out of market and put companies out of business. Like, and this in my world, that's not a good way, to do business. So yeah, I mean, uh, to recap on this one here, don't bite off more than you can chew. Do what you say you're going to do when you do it. That'll build up trust with the utility. That'll make them more flexible with you on pricing and like getting things done faster, that sort of thing. Um, don't ask them to spend money on your behalf when you're the one who's cutting the check. You can be like, hey, chop chop, guys, can we get this done a little faster? But when they're burning a bunch of money for you and they don't even know if it's going to work out for them, then they're going to be a little bit less inclined to move. Show up in person, shake someone's hand, and just be real with yourself and them about how much power you're consuming, and how your business impacts the local community that you're in, if you're not a good operator. All right, so how to get favorable ESA terms, right? If you pull on one lever, you move the other, okay? And what I mean by that is Bitcoin miners, we all want cheap kilowatt hours. We all want cheap delivery of those kilowatt hours, okay? So yeah, I mean, it essentially means that that means that you have to be offline when energy is. Thank you, Joe. Joe was in that video at the beginning of some of the people who've actually gone out and built Bitcoin mines as some of the partially as a result of some of the educational content we've done before. Great guy, very smart. Um, anyways, so yeah, so I was saying it means that you have to be off when that energy is expensive to buy, and you have to be off when that energy is expensive to get to you, right? Um, and what that means is essentially, one of the biggest things we can talk about is your demand charges. Um, it's already getting late here. I'm not gonna get into what demand charges are for those of you who don't know. I'm sorry, but you'll understand once you go out and look into this a little bit more. But basically, like one of the things you can do is say like, look, I want kilowatt hours for 3.7 cents, and I'm willing to pay $22 a kilowatt demand charge. So what that means is, yeah, if I'm off for all of my peaks, and by the way, you don't always know when those peaks are. You have to guess sometimes. Other times, like the utility will tell you most of the time, but like it's a little bit of a gray area. So if I'm off for all the coincident demand peak of that month, then yes, I get to buy electricity for 3.7 cents kilowatt hour plus say $2 demand. But if I'm on during that peak and I either fail to turn off or I don't correctly estimate when that peak is going to be and I end up being on, now my energy price for that month goes to 11 cents. Um, and this isn't that specific scenario with those numbers that I just gave isn't like something that I'm just making up. This is actually a site that I'm building for a client in the Midwest. So you want cheaper kilowatt hours. Okay, well, if you're on when you're not supposed to be, it's going to be very expensive for you, and like we can make that trade. Um, you know, one of the other things that Bitcoin miners love to gripe about is how much it costs to put deposits down on energy. Okay, and what you have to understand is that when an energy company agrees to provide you power, they're essentially extending you 2 months of your power consumption worth of credit. And how that works is they have to buy the electricity or they have to buy the fuel. They have to produce it and they have to distribute it to you, and they bill you once monthly, right? So already they've been paying money to provide you the service for 30 days before you even get a bill, and then once you get that bill, you don't have to pay it for another 30 days. And during those 30 days, they're also continuing to provide you that service. They're continuing to pay money to provide you this electricity. So essentially, even though you get billed once monthly, you are being provided 2 months of your total energy bill worth of credit. Okay, and with a 7 to 10% internal rate of return, and with needing to keep the heat on in the houses so that people can stay alive, they cannot afford to not have the money to provide electricity to their normal customers in their homes. So that is why they require a 2 month deposit. And then we come in there and start being like, oh well, that's so much money. Like, can't you do 1 month deposit? Well, like, yeah, sure. Maybe they can do a 1 month deposit for you, but if they're not super confident in the fact that you're going to pay your bill, or that you have assets or credit to make up for it if you don't, then like, okay, sure, like I'll take some risk on going down to a 1 month deposit for you, but that electricity is going to cost you more now, right? And so, just be pulling a lever over here and it affects one over there. So yeah, I just want to I guess share those tips and tricks with you guys on getting a little bit more tactical on how to actually get cheap kilowatt hours. And I believe, yeah, that's it, guys. You made it.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Taylor. First, before we get into the questions, I just want to apologize to anybody who's watching this video after the fact. I messed up the StreamYard video chat and only made it to where like only 15 guests could be in here. So we will make sure this is, yeah, I know, Taylor, I totally screwed that one up. It was supposed to be an on-air webinar and not a studio recording. But we will make sure that this recording is available to anyone and everyone who missed it and wants to view it. So I deeply apologize for that. It will be better next time. If anybody would like to ask Taylor a question, please put that question in the chat and I will bring you up on stage. Just know that this is recorded. And if you don't want to be seen, just make sure that your camera is off. But thank you, Taylor. That was an incredible presentation. I know that there was a lot to cover in it, but I think you did an amazing job. Yeah, just really appreciate you taking the time to do that with us today.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, so I've got a question on Telegram from somebody who was not able to make it into the chat, and I'll read it to you just so that we can kind of start this these questions off. Let's see here. I'm going to pull it up. So Dev from the Build a Mind Bootcamp asks, I wonder how special a PPA partnership is between different states in the US, some more friendly and some less. He's like, I wonder if there's a template conversation when trying to engage with power companies about bargaining for a PPA to experiment with a new technology they don't have much experience with.
Without touching a bit of a hot button subject, I would say that it's like the most impactful way to look at that is look at how business friendly the state that you're operating in is. If people are business friendly, they want to do business. They're going to be willing to work with you and find a way to do so. If doing business is not their priority, you might find some challenges with that. Yeah, and I guess that's how I would answer that question. I mean, 2, 3, 4 years ago, like, did a lot of utilities not know what Bitcoin mining was or not have any experience with it? Yes. Now, I would actually say that most utilities probably have at least like one mine on their network if they cover a large part of a state. So most people these days probably do have some experience with it. I would say just know your supplier, de-risk them, and they'll be willing to work with you for the most part, no matter where you are.
Awesome, thank you for that, Ron. I'm going to bring you up on stage if that's okay. Do you want to ask your question now, Ron? You're muted. That's better. There you go.
Okay. No, I was just, I'm in a situation where I really want to get into this, but I'm barely able to reach a 1 megawatt level. And what I'm wondering, are you aware of any teams or groups that are trying to work together to facilitate a larger site, by banding together and providing, all of their resources combined, sort of a co-op or something like that, or ways that, individual smaller guys that, like me, who can merge in or somehow be part of a larger site.
Am I like aware of anybody who is like actively looking for a partnership like that, like right now? Not necessarily. I mean, like maybe me. um, but I would say that I mean typically that's how things get done in Bitcoin mining and like any kind of like data center development, real estate development, like multifamily, like that kind of thing. Like it's not typically like just one person who has a lot of money doing it all by themselves. It's more commonly like, two or three, maybe four partners that get together. Maybe two or three of them have some capital and some credit that they can put down, and maybe like the fourth one is like kind of like the technical guy or something like that. And yeah, I mean, people band together to do these things and form partnerships all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably people in this room who would at least be willing to have that conversation with you. So I don't know. I mean, I would say feel free to drop your contact information in the chat if I'm not overstepping.
Definitely not overstepping on that one. I did share a link to our Build a Mind Bootcamp Telegram conversation chat. So I would say that anybody who wants to, take Ron up on that and find out some more information about that, just click on that link, join our Build a Mind Bootcamp Telegram channel. It's easy, it's free to join, and then you can just kind of facilitate those conversations there, and then move it off channel if you'd like to. But we have another question, Ron. I'm going to move you out of the channel. We have Edgar. Edgar, I'm going to bring you up so you can ask your question.
Awesome. Hey, Taylor. So one of my questions is, I'm here in the Houston area. I know the Houston area pretty well, and I know all the different brokers, Priority Power, and all these other guys, right, to talk to you about power here. But let's say I'm looking somewhere like in Ohio, Tennessee, or somewhere else that it's not in the area that I'm familiar with. What's the best approach or a resource to kind of look at the proper brokers or maybe agents that would allow me to go ahead and break through and get that ball rolling? And that way, because from what I've seen in my experiences, if you can establish a good location with cheap power, it makes it easier to then go in and find the real estate part of it, right? Because I think acquiring the cheap power is, or being able to figure out where the cheap power is, then you move on. Okay, now we go to the real estate part where that's going to be a little bit easier to tackle, right?
If you can, that can be a little bit challenging, like depending on what your scale is, because like often a utility, they won't do like that load sample analysis for you unless you have a piece of real estate that they right. But I do agree. Like first find the cheap power, then go get the real estate, or find the power cost, the availability of power, and then the real estate surrounding that power availability. To answer your question though, I mean I would say one, just like it's kind of like how you do DD on anything else. Like I mean, a referral is best. Like ask other Bitcoin miners who they're going through if they're willing to share that information with you. And I find like often people in this industry are pretty open and collaborative. Like what's going great for that guy over there that's got 50 megs will probably go great for you for your first 5 megs in the area, right? And then like you mentioned Ohio specifically. Like I find that because like I mean brokering energy is like brokering ASICs. It's a very crowded space. Like people find out like you can broker $10 million deals and like you can make some money there, and everybody wants to do it,
Right.
right? So like there's probably 30 energy brokers in every major city. How do you pick the right one? Well, one of the things that I look for is I look for people who are involved in progressive areas of things, like for example like Sonoda, Prometheus, like those kind of people. Look for their recommendations and look for people who have been involved in just in like higher level roles in the industry. Like for example, there's a lady who is an NG broker in Ohio. I think her name's Sue Ennis. and she used to be a trader on the CME floor for like Shell for like the PJM area. Like people who've proven that they know the markets well enough that they have a full-time job involving trading tens of millions of dollars to make someone else money in that market proves that they know that market, and they now have a business that is trading that energy for you. To me, that lends itself credibility.
Right. Okay, gotcha. I guess it's just using the network of individuals that we're all involved in and kind of going off of there. Okay, cool. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yeah, you're welcome,
Edgar.
dude.
Well, I have one more question from Dev on the Build a Mind Bootcamp. If anybody else has any questions, please, again, put them in the chat. But this question is, so Dev is interested in heat recycling. Would collaborating on a PPA with an industrial heating customer be something that makes sense, or does it not make sense?
Okay, so there's kind of two layers there of this to me. One layer is collaborating on the PPA, and the other layer is collaborating with the industrial heating customer. It depends on how they're producing that heat. If they're producing the heat using electricity only, um, yeah, no, I'm actually just gonna go ahead and say, collaborating on the PPA aspect, probably not, because they need X amount of heat, and that requires X amount of kilowatt hours to produce that heat. So you're not gonna be like adding consumption to get a bulk deal, and it depends on the kind of customer. Like when they need the heat, they might need the heat right then, so you might not be able to participate in like demand response, curtailment, those kind of things. If you can, it might make sense to collaborate on the PPA. As far as the other aspect, I'll like collaborating on the industrial heating aspect of it. I will say I do think that the future of decentralized Bitcoin mining is heat reuse. Um, for the industrial application, there's the challenge that ASICs, the current status quo ASIC, there's some things happening in this area where people are making some claims that are different. But the current status quo of ASICs do not produce a high enough temperature to be useful for industrial heating applications. So that's a challenge that you'll have to figure out getting across. But yeah, heat reuse is the current frontier of Bitcoin mining, in my opinion. So I think you're thinking in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I think that we're good on questions. Nobody else is popping in. So Taylor, I just want to say again, thank you so much for this presentation. It was very insightful. I think that our audience learned a lot. I also want to say I apologize again for the dropping of the ball that I made today, and next time it will be better. So yeah, with that, I think we can close out this this webinar.
Awesome. Well, hey, I do build Bitcoin mines for a living and provide financing to people who want to build Bitcoin mines for a living. So if one of those things are something that you need, feel free to figure out how to get a hold of me and talk to me. But yeah, I was happy to come and share knowledge with you guys today, and I hope it's helpful to you all in your journey.
Yeah. Do you have a website for Solomon Data Systems so that people could find you, or is that not something you have yet?
Actually, I don't have a website. I did a little while ago. I'm kind of like a one-man band right now, but I can just drop in my my email and my Telegram.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, just drop that in the Build a Mind Bootcamp chat, and anybody who wants to get a hold of you can do that. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being here today, and I look forward to next month.
Welcome to the MasterMined Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the MasterMined Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.